Hey everyone, thanks for checking us out at 316 Podcasts. I am Clayton and I am with 316 Creative Works. Before we start, you always want to thank your production crew. So in studio today is our creative producer Esther, also always our technical producer Justin, and our house manager Danielle. Again, I'm Clayton from 316 Creative Works, and today we are so happy and so honored to have with us. Today we are talking with Jason. Now listen, before we get too deep into the woods here a little bit, Jason is a good friend of mine, right? So there's always, you always want to be as honest as you possibly can. I don't want anyone to think that we've just met. I've known Jason for a number of years. Jason is a good friend of mine. He's a pastor. He's a husband. He's a father. He's a good friend to a lot of people. So today we are talking with Jason. Coming to you live from the Farmhouse Studios. Jason, first of all, thank you so much, man. I'm so honored that you would spend some time here with us at the farmhouse. So thanks for coming in, man.
Absolutely, Clayton.
So you've got, like all of us, you've got a story, right? And to some people, it's an extraordinary story. But all things being relative, to other people, it's okay. Like you're not a crackhead, right?
Not the last time I checked.
You don't have that testimony, right?
No, I do not.
But there are other twists and turns and whatevers in your story, right? First of all, today, as we sit here today, it's end of February 2021. You are gainfully employed.
I am.
As a pastor. Do you prefer pastor or preacher?
A pastor.
Good reverend, right?
I usually just prefer Jason.
I told you, don't be funny. You're killing me here. You're married?
I am to Kristen.
Kristen, and you have?
3 children.
3 kids.
Annika is 21. Justin is 19 and is in the room right now. And Kate is 16.
Okay, so since he let the cat out of the bag, my producer is Jason's middle and favorite son. Right?
Correct. I mean, my favorite son.
Fair to say.
Absolutely.
Fair to say. You work at Faith Church.
I'm the pastor at the Highland location.
You're the pastor at the Highland location. There's a bunch of locations there.
We have 5 locations for Faith Church. Yep.
Ooh.
So I'm at the Highland location.
All right. Before we get on to that, let's start at the beginning. Not the beginning of in the beginning God said, but in the beginning of Jason. Normal kid, or you kind of just my mom and a dad and normal, really no big things. They're just.
Yeah, I don't think there were any huge things. My mom and dad were really young when they got married and when I was born.
Well, young love does that, right? I mean, I was married young. I found my love in high school. And after college, it was either you break up or get married. I mean, you had to move to the next level. So it was also 47 years ago-ish, right? 47, 48, 49 years ago. So yeah, young was cool back then.
So yeah, got married young. Then they had 3 kids, basically about 3 years apart. And for the most part, things were fairly normal, stable family. Went to Grandma and Grandpa's every Sunday after church for dinner. But when my sister, who's the youngest, I have a younger brother and then a younger sister. And when my younger sister was about 3 years old, they discovered that she had a brain tumor. Really? And so then that threw a lot of things, changed a lot of things.
Yeah, so she was 3, and you said you were about 3 years apart. That puts you at 9-ish?
Right about there, yeah.
Do you remember that?
I do. I remember having to get into the van and go. She had the brain tumor removed, and then she had to have radiation. And I remember having to get in the window van and driving downtown to Children's Memorial Hospital at the time to go with for radiation treatments. And you just knew this wasn't normal, and you knew it was serious.
So you knew that because you were told that, or you felt the energy in the family change?
Well, you feel the change. You feel the focus has to go right to this. But you also look around, and none of your friends at school are going through this. Nobody else is talking about these issues or having to get in the van to go downtown to radiation treatment. So you knew it was unique for your family.
Yeah. Do you remember life before?
That's a good question. I'm not sure that I do.
Yeah.
Yeah,
So
not sure that I do.
So when you think now, all right, we're brothers, we're good friends. Our wives are cousins, friends, and so I kind of grew up knowing about you. So when I think about my life and my stories and the things that formed me, I think about how far back I can think. So are you really telling me that you don't remember a time in life that cancer was not a word in your reality?
Yeah, I don't think I do.
Your mom and dad were healthy,
Yes.
and they're still
Healthy.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But I was saying, I don't want to gloss over that. But did you have a fairly normal childhood, other than the fact that your childhood was, I don't want to say consumed. I'm sure your parents tried to be as normal as possible, but cancer was a part of it.
Correct. And there were seasons right after she went through that treatment. Then she was fine for a while. Then it came back when she was 12. And so, yeah, there were seasons of definite normalcy. And I think my parents worked really hard to try to make our lives as normal as possible and to have routines. And, the last week of July, every summer, we went to Shitek, Wisconsin fishing.
Careful how you say that. It's a family show.
Yeah, okay.
It's shit tech, right? Right.
So, my dad would clean out his work truck and we would load into it. This is the day before you had to wear seatbelts, and you'd be in the back of this work van and driving up to Wisconsin and going fishing and going swimming all week. And yeah, the other things, rhythms of life maintained, still went to church, still saw, your family every week and did family things.
You've got a big family.
Correct.
Now, I don't know if it's admirable or annoying. I have a smaller family and kind of thrown out all over the country, but you've got a big family unit. I don't know if it's your dad's fault or your mom's fault or where the big familyness comes from.
Yeah, well, I'd actually say it's both. While my dad only has one sister, we were with that family every Sunday for Sunday dinner, but then too, we saw his cousins and his aunts and uncles and the extended family. And then my mom is the oldest of 6 kids. And we do things with their extended family. And so
it sounds to me
big.
like your family is like the Italian version of a Dutch family. Like you guys are
Probably
always getting together in some huge thing.
A Christmas party was probably 70 people.
Yeah. I'd be lucky to get 7 people.
No, so it's good. I mean, it's all what you grow up with, right? And what you're used to.
Yeah. So when you were a kid, I mean, do you remember that family getting together and kind of railing around Nick and Karen to bless them and pray for them and take care of you and your brother? Was that a big part of it? Like,
sure.
Like the family came together?
Yeah, I remember aunts, uncles taking turns spending the night with her in the hospital or coming to spend the night with me and my brother. I also remember even broader the church family. Like I remember we lived in Country Club Hills while the majority of our family was kind of centered in South Holland. And I remember the elders of Faith Church coming to my grandparents' family room to lay hands and pray for my sister. And so, yeah, the entire family jumped in and supported us.
Faith Church, that's where you work?
It is where I work. And it's where I grew up.
Really?
Yeah.
So you've been a part of that church community for 47 years too?
Correct. Yeah. Yep. Only church I've ever known.
There's some striking differences between my life and your life. I mean, today we're practically twins. And I still have my luscious head of hair. We'll talk about that later. But so I'm the youngest and only son. You're the oldest and one of two boys. And your youngest, the sister, is the one who got diagnosed with cancer. Was there a pressure that you know of or thought of on you to help be the man or to behave differently? Was there any added pressure that you realized or thought of?
Yeah, I think there's a couple things. I think one, there was not that anybody put it on, but I felt that there was a pressure like, my parents have enough crap to deal with.
Yeah.
Let's not give them any other crap that they have to deal with from me.
Okay, so that really tempered your behavior. So not a lot of alcohol, no drugs, no shenanigans at school. You never got kicked out, in-school suspensions. You tried to be a good boy.
I tried. Yeah, I got kicked out of a classroom once or twice, but
I need to hear.
They were no big deal.
Because as a pastor, we're always trying to look for the kink in your armor, right? I mean, the thing that makes you
they're
human,
there,
right?
They're there.
So you really tried to be less of a problem for Nick and Karen as you could.
Right.
Yeah.
So there was that. And then when I was a senior in high school, her cancer returned, and Nikki's cancer returned. And
hang on, I don't want to just jump right through it. So she got diagnosed with cancer at about 3.
Yep.
And then everything's okay.
Yep.
And then when you were in high school?
Correct. And she was about 12.
Okay, it came back.
It came back. So I do remember them, and it was then, I believe, in her spine. And so I remember my parents coming back from the hospital in tears, telling Kyle, my brother, and myself what was going on. And then my dad did say, I recall him saying, you're going to have to take care of some things because I need to focus on this, which I fully understand.
Yeah, you were in high school. You had your license then. You were
Correct.
Working. You were a swimmer, right? I remember you were a jock.
I think I was pretty athletic then. Yeah. And then, was the actually first swimmer, first letter winner in swimming for my high school, which didn't have a pool.
Yeah.
But my cousin swam.
So it was easy to letter then.
Yeah. So my cousin swam, and I started swimming at Thornwood with his friends, and thankfully my high school let me do that.
Uh-huh. So you do remember a time when your mom and dad came home, and your dad said, "Jason, you got to step up a little bit."
Yeah.
That grows you up, right?
I think so.
Yeah, so another major difference in our life is I was always really charmed, right? My parents, I hate to say this publicly, but for crying out loud, let's just be honest. I was always taken care of. My parents always took care of me. I mean, my sisters always took care of me, my aunts, my uncles. I was the baby of the family that everybody took care of. It wasn't until maybe a year ago that I finally grew up and became a responsible man, right? But you had that kind of put on you pretty early.
Yeah, and I think my parents just intentionally raised us to be independent anyway.
Responsible, mature.
I mean, I remember being in high school, and if we said, hey, we want to, I want to go with my friends to a Cubs game, they're like, you know where the train is in Harvey? You can drive to Harvey, get on the train, switch to the L downtown, go to the Cubs game. You could go downtown. I remember being 16, and family had a heating and air conditioning business. And my dad's like, I need you to go pick up a truckload of air conditioners. And 16, getting in a box truck, no rear window, got to use the side mirrors, go down the tollway, no GPS, just a handwritten map from my grandpa on where I'm going in Itasca. And it's like, yeah, go. So I think they raised us to be independent as well.
And you're still a fairly independent spirit. I know as we've driven around before, we'd pass something like, oh, I did a thing over there, I did something over there, and I was like, oh, how old are you? Like, I was 17. And most kids at the time weren't hanging out in Chicago at 17, 16 years old.
Yeah, thankfully I had older cousins who were also allowed to go downtown, who taught me the ropes, and we were able to go to Taste Chicago, go do all these things, and it was a blast. But it was also a different time than it is now.
Yeah.
In case our kids are starting to think like they
no.
could go do that.
Your children and my children are not driving downtown.
Correct.
It's not going to happen. Not until they're 50, right? And by the time you're 50, you don't want to drive downtown.
Right.
I mean,
I just want to go to bed.
I'm almost 50. I'm like, I don't even know how to spell Chicago. So other than a pretty life-changing diagnosis in your family, you had a pretty normal childhood.
Correct.
Except, let's be honest, your dad owned a heating and air conditioning company. Now, I know what it's like to run a business. So anybody who owns a business has a ton of money. So you must have been raised like as a rich kid.
Absolutely not. So first of all, he didn't own it when I was born.
Okay.
He just worked there.
Oh.
And he was a serviceman and HVAC tech. And my grandpa, my mom's dad, and his brother had started the company.
Oh.
And so for the first about 11, 12 years of my life, he was an HVAC tech. And he actually worked a second job for quite a while at Ed Shirley Sports in Markham.
Yeah, I remember that.
And just took his pay in gear. So my dad has plenty of fishing gear.
A lot of fishing.
But then there came a time when my grandpa's brother wanted out in the early 80s. And so when my great uncle sold, my dad bought in, and then my mom's only brother bought in. So they became partners then. And so then probably in about 6th grade, then it changed. But then
That's when you guys started making all that money. 6th grade.
I don't think money was much of a concern, but also the amount of hours you have to put in go up.
Yep.
Thankfully, we lived right across the driveway, but I remember, he'd get up, he'd go to work 6 o'clock in the morning, busy when they were in the summer or in the winter, work through the day, come home for supper, and then go right back out till 8, 9 o'clock at night to get ready for the next day.
So that was right. So that was, you said that 6th, 7th grade. So that's right in between your sister's cancer diagnosis.
Correct.
Right. Did you get along with your parents?
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, we had a great relationship. They were very trusting and very empowering to do what we needed to do, and felt free to do. Yeah, and very encouraging to say, what is it that you want to do? So wait a minute, you want to be the only swimmer at your high school? Okay, let's do this. And you brought up the family support before. The first year that I did it was my junior year of high school, and went through the first sectional meet, and my grandparents came, and my family's very competitive. You should know that.
I've played some games. We don't anymore.
Extremely competitive. Yeah. And so I finished, and my grandma's comment was, so is there like anywhere you can go to get better? Uh-huh. And then for Christmas, they sent me to swim camp with my friends, and what is it that you want to do? Or they would push me to, because my grandparents would take my brother and I fishing in Canada to a missions camp run by retired missionaries. And in the summer between my junior and senior year at the camp, they said, hey, the guy who usually works here in the summer and helps the people out who come, he's not going to be here. You've been here for a few years. Why don't you come up and be a fishing guide? What do I know about being a fishing guide in Canada?
Put the boat in the water, man.
But my mom drove me to a truck stop in Rockford, put me into a van with a family we don't know.
Who are you people?
And off to Canada I went.
It wasn't the Gacy family, was it?
It was not. We had people who knew them. The people at the camp knew them. That's where they were going. But, when these opportunities came, my parents said no. When I was in college and thought about getting into radio and doing TV, my parents never said, what are you, crazy?
Yeah.
They're like, how can we help you?
Yeah, and that's crazy. And one of the things that I really wanted to talk with you about is all of the experiences that you've had. So I don't want to miss a beat, but I do want to kind of run through it, right? So sister gets cancer. It's a life-changing diagnosis for the family. Now, you've got a great family of support. You also have a great church family, right? So Faith Church 40 years ago was a great place. It still is. I'm not saying it, but 40 years ago was a great place. Great family, great church. And you're trying to be as normal as possible. And you were raised independent. So you graduate with lettering in swimming.
Yep.
And you graduate normal. Like
What do you mean normal?
No weirdness, right? I mean, like you didn't drop out and get your GED.
I graduated normally.
Okay, you didn't graduate early.
No.
Right? You're just a normal kid. A good group of friends at your school?
Eventually it got there.
Yeah.
It wasn't necessarily.
Did you have some rough days at Ileana?
Well, yeah. I mean, I would say, coming out of 8th grade, I'm like the youngest kid in my class. I was the second shortest kid coming out of 8th grade.
Which is strange to think of now, right?
Yes.
Yeah.
I loved to play sports, but wasn't necessarily gifted with the size to play sports when that happened. So you kind of had these two groups at Ileana. You had the kids who played sports, and then you had the kids who were out smoking behind the school.
Yeah.
And the kids who are out smoking behind the school, they'll take anybody.
Yeah.
So for a while, that's where I hung out. I didn't smoke. I didn't do any of those things, but that's where you found acceptance, and that's where I hung out. But after a while, I'm like, that's not what I'm into. So it got down to a really small group of friends, and then was hanging out with my cousin and his friends at Thornwood, the swimmers. But then senior year, like the athletic kids kind of, I think, got over themselves.
Yeah, right.
But I mean, to the point where choosing a college, I chose based on large part where nobody else in my class was going.
Really?
Because I didn't want to go where any of them went.
Okay, so you had a strong family community. You had a strong church community. You had a handful of really good friends by the time you graduated, and you graduated normal, but you chose to go to college somewhere where nobody or few people from your life went.
Correct. Some older people that I knew went there. Some people from church went there. But nobody from my graduating class went there. And I also kind of went there because when you fill out the ACT and you got to put down 3 schools to send your scores, I sent them. And the guidance counselor sat me down and he said, okay, of the 3 that you've chosen, here is the ranking of the easiest that it'll be for you to get in and probably the best where you would do. And this one, the third choice, the hardest one and probably where you won't do real well, I chose to go that one to help prove him wrong.
Yeah. And
because I can be stubborn and competitive like that.
yeah, are you kidding me? You're always such a pushover in my world. I don't know what you're talking. What college did you go to?
I went to Hope College in Holland, Michigan.
Hope College in Holland, Michigan. Mm-hmm. I love it. That's also a great place to just hit pause here for a little bit. Hey, guys, I really want to thank you for checking us out, 316 Podcast. I'm Clayton from 316 Creative Works. This is just number 1 of Talking with Jason. Hey, this is Clayton from 316 Creative Works, talking about our podcast. Listen, if you like any of this stuff that you saw or you heard, I'm going to give you a couple places where you might find it besides coming in live to the Farmhouse Studios. There's a couple platforms you can find these on. So you can check out Facebook, YouTube, Spotify, Apple Podcasts, Google Podcasts, iTunes, and SoundCloud. So for the cheap seats in the back there, let me say this one more time. You can go to Facebook, YouTube, Spotify, Apple Podcasts, Google Podcasts, iTunes, and SoundCloud. You can find it under 316 Podcasts.